February 28, 7:43 a.m., Minab, southern Iran. The Shayaratibi Girls' Elementary School was packed with students, CNN. Then a missile hit. The roof collapsed on the students, 156 civilians were killed, 120 of them school children, girls between the ages of 7 and 12. On the first morning of the war, in the first hours of the opening strike, an image of a bespectacled young boy waving goodbye to his mother for the last time went viral. Today, 60 days later, a congressman stood in the United States Congress and asked the Secretary of Defense a direct question. How much did that strike cost? Hegseth's response, I wouldn't tie a cost to that. I wouldn't tie a cost to that. 120 dead children, 2 months of investigation, and the answer given to Congress was no cost attached. I have spent for decades watching governments account or fail to account for the human cost of their decisions. What I witnessed in that congressional hearing today is one of the most consequential failures of accountability I have observed in my career. And I want you to understand exactly why. Before we continue for things, subscribe to Respect B, because what I am about to tell you about the Minab school, about what the U.S. military knew, about what was cut before this war began that made this strike possible, this is the analysis. The major networks have not assembled in one place. Subscribe and activate the bell. Share this video with one person, someone who needs to understand that this war has a cost that no press conference is properly accounting for, a cost measured not in dollars, in children. Give it a like. And leave a comment. Tell me where in the world you are watching from, your city, your country. Now let us examine what actually happened in Minab and what was done about it. Let me give you the complete account of what happened at the Shayaratibi Elementary School on February 28, because the full picture has never been assembled clearly in a single place. The school sits in the Sharaki al-Mahdi neighborhood of Minab, a small town in Hormozgan province in southern Iran, approximately 800 miles from Tehran. According to witness accounts corroborated by satellite-based analyses, the area of the school was hit by multiple strikes. The roof collapsed on students. Wikipedia video footage released by Iranian state media gave visual indications that Tomahawk missiles struck a compound that included the school. Iranian state media also released pictures of Tomahawk missile components on a table in front of the school. Tomahawk missiles, American weapons, their components photographed on the ground in front of a collapsed girls' school. Multiple independent investigations concluded that the United States was responsible for the strike. The U.S. military's initial assessment found that its forces were likely behind the attack, according to a U.S. official who was not authorized to speak publicly. Al Jazeera. Now here is the detail that changes everything. NPR reported that the girls' school was once part of what had been an Iranian Revolutionary Guard naval base and may have been shown on outdated US targeting databases from before 2013, before 2013. The school had been a military site more than a decade before this war began. Someone or something failed to update the targeting database. An initial Al Jazeera investigation concluded that the attack was either based on outdated intelligence from before 2013, which would constitute grave negligence, or that the attack was intentional, done to inflict maximum societal shock, grave negligence, or intentional. Those are the two options that an independent investigation concluded are consistent with the evidence, and here is the institutional detail that explains how this happened. After a series of fatal strikes involving civilians in Iraq and Afghanistan, Congress directed the Pentagon to reduce civilian casualties as part of a 2019 law. During the Biden administration, the Defense Department created the Civilian Harm Mitigation and Response Initiative. The civilian mitigation teams cut by 90% by Hegseth work with military commanders on target planning and making sure that targets are actually military sites. Cut by 90 by Pete Hegseth. Before this war began, a U.S. official told NPR that Hegseth's decision to scale back those efforts meant that U.S. Central Command had only one staffer assigned to civilian casualty mitigation operations, one staffer for the entire Middle East theater, on the day American missiles struck a school full of girls. Now let me examine how the United States government responded to the killing of 120 children, because the response is as significant as the event itself. February 28, hours after the strike, Captain Tim Hawkins, speaking on behalf of US Central Command, said, "We are aware of reports concerning civilian harm resulting from Ongoing military operations, we take these reports seriously and are looking into them, aware of reports, looking into them. March 1st, the next day, Trump, when asked about the strike, claimed that Iran or somebody else was responsible. Iran or somebody else. The President of the United States, standing in front of cameras, suggested that Iran may have bombed its own girls' school. Military experts widely dismissed Trump's claim that Iran possessed Tomahawk missiles. March 4th, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the U.S. would not deliberately target a school. March 9th, Trump told reporters, "I don't know about it, I don't know about it," the deadliest single civilian casualty event of the entire war, and the president said he did not know about it. At a press conference shortly after the war began, Hegseth criticized stupid rules of engagement, saying such rules interfere with winning. Stupid rules of engagement. The rules he was criticizing, the civilian casualty mitigation protocols he had cut by 90%, are the rules designed to prevent Tomahawk missiles from hitting girls' schools based on targeting data from 2013, and today, April 29, 60 days after those girls died, a congressman asked Hegseth in front of Congress how much the strike cost. Hegseth said, "That unfortunate situation is under investigation. I wouldn't tie a cost to that unfortunate situation." That is the official language of the United States government for the killing of 120 schoolgirls by an American missile on the first morning of this war. An unfortunate situation. I want to be direct about something. I am not suggesting that the United States deliberately targeted children. The evidence does not support that conclusion. What the evidence does support is something that in some respects demands equal examination, that a system designed to prevent exactly this kind of strike was deliberately and systematically dismantled before this war began, that the person who dismantled it is the person now testifying before Congress, and that the answer he gave today I wouldn't tie a cost to, that is not an answer. It is the absence of one. Let me examine the congressional response to the Minab school strike because it reveals something important about the institutional architecture of accountability in a democracy at war. 46 Democratic senators signed a letter to Hegseth asking, "Are you complying with rules to prevent the commission of war crimes? Are you complying with rules to prevent the commission of war crimes?" That question asked by 46 United States senators to their own Secretary of Defense is not a routine oversight inquiry, it is a constitutional alarm. Representative Jason Crow led 120 Democratic congresspersons to demand answers on recent civilian deaths during Operation Epic Fury, including a U.S. strike on an Iranian girls' elementary school where at least 175 civilians, many of them children, were killed. 120 members of Congress demanding answers, and today, the first time Hegseth testified before Congress since the war began, this is the answer they received: "I wouldn't tie a cost to that." Hegseth also told the House Armed Services Committee that congressional Democrats are the biggest adversary we face. The biggest adversary, not Iran, not the IRG, not the proxy networks conducting 400 attacks on American bases across Iraq, the lawmakers asking about 120 dead schoolgirls. Those are, in the official characterization of the United States Secretary of Defense, America's biggest adversary. I have spent for decades studying how democracies hold their governments accountable during wartime, and I want to say something plainly. The function of congressional oversight is not to undermine a war effort. It is to ensure that the people paying for that war with their taxes, with their soldiers, with their gas prices and grocery bills have an honest accounting of what is being done in their name. When the Secretary of Defense describes lawmakers seeking that accounting as the enemy, he is not defending the war, he is defending his own decisions from scrutiny. Those are not the same thing. 8-ton experts called for independent investigation of specific attacks that could constitute grave violations of international humanitarian law. Una Hathaway, a professor of international law at Yale Law School, said, "At every level, civilian protection has been deprioritized at every level. The civilian mitigation teams cut by 90%, the targeting database not updated since 2013, the one staffer assigned to civilian casualty mitigation for the entire Middle East theater, the Secretary of Defense who said stupid rules of engagement interfere with winning." This is the institutional picture that produced the Minab school strike, not a rogue missile, not a random error, a system. I want to spend a moment on something that the congressional testimony, the military investigations, and the diplomatic coverage have almost entirely omitted. The children themselves, the majority of those killed were girls between the ages of 7 and 12. The head of Iran's Red Crescent said the incident had no comparison with any other incident, that no singular attack had killed so many students simultaneously. Even in Gaza, an image of a bespectacled young boy waving goodbye to his mother for the last time went viral globally. Rows of graves are visible in imagery of the local cemetery. Researchers at Human Rights Watch reviewed lists with dozens of names of children and adults reportedly killed in the attack. Iranian President Pezeshkian said, and I want you to hear this directly, the American and Zionist aggression against Minab Elementary School will never be erased from the historical memory of our nation. I do not cite that statement to assign blame. I cite it because it is the political reality that any diplomat trying to negotiate an end to this war has to navigate. Iran is being asked to surrender its nuclear program, accept Hormuz conditions, and constrain its proxy networks, while the family members of 120 dead schoolgirls are still identifying their children's graves in Minab. The negotiating table has 120 ghosts sitting at it that no official has publicly acknowledged. And the Secretary of Defense's answer today, I wouldn't tie a cost to, that is the answer that every Iranian official, every Pakistani mediator, every regional diplomat will have heard by nightfall. A moral accounting is not optional in a negotiation of this kind. It is the foundation on which any durable agreement has to be built, and America has not yet provided one. February 28, 7:43 a.m. Minab, a missile hit a girls' school. 120 children died. The targeting database had not been updated since 2013. The civilian mitigation team had been cut by 90% before the war began. There was one staffer assigned to civilian casualty prevention for the entire Middle East theater. Today, 60 days later, the Secretary of Defense sat before Congress. He called the lawmakers, asking about those children, America's biggest adversary. He said he would not tie a cost to what happened in Minab. I want to say something I have not said lightly in 4 decades of covering how governments conduct themselves in war. The children who died in Minab on February 28 did not die because of Iranian aggression. They did not die because of Hezbollah rockets or Irg gunboats or sea mines in the Strait of Hormuz. They died because a system designed to protect them was dismantled. By the man who today told Congress that the people asking about their deaths are America's biggest enemy. Edmund Burke wrote that the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. I would add, in the context of what I observe today, that the only thing necessary for a moral failure to become permanent is for the institution responsible for it to face no accountability. 120 girls went to school on February 28. They did not come home. The Secretary of Defense said he would not tie a cost to that. That answer is not acceptable, not in a democracy, not in any system of government that claims to distinguish itself from the ones it is fighting against. This is respect. Tell me in the comments where in the world are you watching from today?